Hello friends, I am Mohammad Tariq, Faculty History at Vajiram and Ravi. We are going to discuss about the optional subject. Many of you must be wondering that which optional subject is good for you. Since I am teaching this subject since last 26, now it is 27th year, what I know very well from my own experiences after teaching so many successful candidates that history is one of the safest subjects so far since 1860s when the British started writing this exam for Indians and the British, and those subjects which continued throughout the journey of civil services, history remains the most consistent subject. Now, what is the reason that it is the most consistent subject? Because civil services is always about India. How much you know India, right from its ancient time till recent time, and obviously no other subject can give you that kind of depth, detailed information with insight as history can provide. That is why UPSC, since it was established in 1926, had always promoting history through its both optional papers and general studies. And as we progress in my own lecture, you would find that how it is going to help in various other parts of your exam. So the first point about this exam you should remember that many optional papers would come and go, and which you must have noticed that sometime in the next 5 years a particular subject would remain very popular, in the last 4 years some other subject. But if you look at last 100 years, history is the only subject which is the most consistent subject, because a lot of subjects were introduced very recently. For instance, engineering subjects came only in 1990s. Many more subjects may come, but one subject which has retained its charm not only among the aspirants but also those who set the question papers, those who are in the thick and thin of UPSC planning and the government, they always are enthusiastic about the subject history, and that is why it is the safest subject among all the subjects which you have to think while deciding your optional paper. The second important point which you have to understand that it is a scoring, and that also we know it. Do not only see the toppers number. The first 20 in the rank would in any case would come from different subjects, but those first 20 and first 30 students are not the ideal sample size to understand that which subject is good or not so good. Now, what we know that out of 1,000 students or 9,000 students who are selected, history consistently represent a certain number, and you have to see your number in that certain number. Now, the point which you have to keep in your mind that the toppers, since luckily I had chance to teach many toppers of the past, are good students. That is why they are topper. They may take any subject and they may top. But most of us, we should believe, are not cut for the top 10, top 20. That depends on a lot of factors. So let's assume that you are in top 50, top 100, top 200, top 300 to get your desired service, IAS, IPS, IFS, etc. What option you must take with certain advantages a subject would have over some other subject. So the one subject which has advantages after advantages is history, because it would ensure first not only 260 to 70 marks, which is decent enough to get your name in this exam, but also it would add very much value in your other GS, essay, interview, and in prelims. So overall the impact of history would be much more than any other subject. That I am telling with all responsibility, experiences, and the knowledge which we have acquired over a period of time after watching UPSC exam and its trend very closely and how it is going to help in other parts of your exam. I'm going to explain one by one. Now, in GS paper 1, 2, and paper 4. Now, imagine you are taking history as an optional paper. You have to take any other optional paper. Many students, while taking optional paper, they just think about optional, but do not think about other GS paper, essay and interview. And you know that the total marks would make you an IAS, not one particular subject. Even if you score very high, but you score poor and average in other exam, you would struggle. And that's what I have seen so many students who are so brilliant and so good in one particular subject, and that subject could be as popular as public administration once in the early 20th 21st century, or later on sociology, or later and PSIR sometime, anthro, and there was a time when geography was very popular. But I know that it was popular among those who were very enthusiastic candidate, who goes with the crowd. But where the problem lies, that the bulk of students who struggled because they could not do well in other parts of this exam, like GS paper 1 to 4, like essay, and certainly in interview. History is going to help you in almost all papers of your GS, of your essay and interview. Now, in paper 1 GS, there are directly questions from history, which is of 75 to 80 marks out of 275 or 250. But not only that, even the papers like social issues. So if you look at the questions related to women, tribals, peasant, and some of the recent events related to what we call social issues are directly connected with history. So it is overlapping. So what we consider as social issues are not exclusively sociology, not exclusively social issues, but it's a combination of history, sociology, current affairs, because history would give you the insight, the backup, and the newspaper and the materials would give you the current data. And with the help of these and the faculty here, you would do much better in paper 1 if you have history as an optional paper. Now in paper 2 of general studies, you know, it is called Indian Constitution, Governance and International Relation. Now, when you talk about Constitution of India, you all know that Constitution of India is a great work of our freedom struggle leaders. And our freedom struggle movement, right from 1870s, 80s till 1940s, is actually the time when our idea of modern India, when the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity, justice were germinating. Now, the entire foundation of Indian Constitution is based on freedom struggle, on certain political philosophy, on certain principle. Those great leaders from Dadabhai Nauroji generation to Nehru generation, they strongly believed in those ideas, on the basis of which the preamble, the directive principle of state policy and the fundamental rights of Indian Constitution were written. A student who have read freedom struggle very well, she or he would understand the making of Indian Constitution very well. There are direct questions in paper 2 on Indian Council Act 1909, in Government of India Act 1919 and Government of India Act 1935, and this is all taught in history optional in great detail. So you don't have to work extra for general studies. At least 30% part is going to be covered. How it is going to be covered? That's first part I told, through the history of constitution making, through the debates of Constituent Assembly. Then post-independent India, which you have to study as a student of optional history. And nowadays we study post-independence in 1990s. That is the globalization, end of USSR, and our own liberalized economy in the 1990s. This is all part of post-independent India. So obviously, a lot of those development is directly connecting with the current Indian development. So a student who have taken this subject as an optional paper, she would have great advantage in international relation also, you would find that international relation is not like a static subject. It's an ever evolving subject. So the point from where world history would end, international relation would begin. For instance, all the topics related to international organizations, multilateral dialogues, bilateral dialogues, issues between India and neighbors, relationship between India and major powers. This you would learn more in world history than any other paper. Certain part of modern history you would also learn, and now you are writing in GS paper 2 about, say, the question which was asked this year on Indian diaspora. And do you know that Mahatma Gandhi to Vivekanand were all great Indians who went America to South Africa to England, and they laid the foundation of that what today we call Indian diaspora. So if today Mr. Rishi Sunak is Prime Minister of England, it's thanks to Dada Bhai Nauroji onwards who went to England and became parliamentarian. If today Miss Kamala Harris is the Vice President of America, it's thanks to those Indians who went in late 19th century, including Swami Vivekanand, who laid the foundation about idea of India, about various great cultural ethos of India, right from Buddhism to Hinduism, Jainism, and later multicultural ethos which evolved in medieval and modern time. That's what the idea of India they showcased in the West, and that helped in developing a narrative, positive narratives about India. And a lot of Indians who are living in America, Canada, Europe, and Southeast Asian countries, they are rewarded by those native people because of the diaspora which became very strong. And today, if India is emerging as a major global economic, political, and diplomatic power, it's all thanks to the works done by those great Indians in late 19th century. Don't forget the ordinary laborers in South Africa to West Indies to various parts of Europe and even in Gulf countries. These Indians who went for, of course, earning their livelihood, but they became loyal to son of that soil, and they contributed in the growth of their own economy, GDP, and they, of course, help in connecting the relationship between India and those countries. Once you read history, you would get a clarity, and at no stage of your writing or talking, you would have any kind of doubt, which I often see among the students because they have not read history of 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, how industrial revolution evolved, how various French revolution, American revolution, Russian revolution, Chinese revolution developed in the thinking of people. This would be in history, and certainly in paper 4 also you would find there are direct questions which is linked, say, from history. This year itself in 2023, question on Gandhi, on Jawaharlal Nehru, on Vivekanand, they ask in paper 4. They ask also on Guru Nanak. So imagine a student who has taken history as an optional. They do not have to work extra on Guru Nanak or Buddha or Mahavira or Adi Shankaracharya or Ramanuj or any such character, because the teachers here, and we are luckily 4 faculty, I will tell about them also. Each one would tell about their part, and you would have a complete picture from ancient, medieval, modern, and world history. So, in general studies, at least 30% of your general studies, paper 1, 2, and 4, is covered through optional history itself. That means you don't have to go for extra efforts for these subjects, and not only you would save that time which you can invest elsewhere, but also your depth would be much deeper, and you would have wider knowledge than other candidate. Don't forget, this exam is all about competition. How well you are performing than others would ultimately decide your career, and that is why history would help you in all these GS paper 1, 2, 4. Now, how it helps in essay? If you check it, the questions which they have asked in the last few years, those essays are very much related to the issues which is very much common in our day-to-day life. Now, essay in recent past is all about what common people call philosophy. We call it like reflective, something which is happening in the world, not necessarily for common people who can see, but only those who are thinking, who are reflecting, who are reading regularly. See the question which was asked this year. Thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an opposite team. A student of history optional would always have a better example when you are talking about wars, when you're talking about various diplomatic relationship, when you're talking about trade relationship, when you're talking about philosophical ideology, say Buddha and Mahavira, Buddhism and Hinduism, Hinduism and Jainism, Christianity and Islam, Islam and Judaism, Judaism and Christianity, you would find they always had an opposite team at that time. So at individual level, at community level, at national level. In the market and corporate also, when a company comes, they always see an opposite and then they start plan. So their mind becomes much more active, creative and constructive. Of course, sometimes destructive also. In a sports, you play chess or you play football or you play cricket or you play hockey. You know, you always loved some opposite because it challenges you, because it ignites you, it triggers you, and certain animal spirits comes out from you and you start doing much better than what perhaps you would do alone. And that is what history can help you a lot, because you would never have a dearth of examples, as other students I know would struggle because they did not read as much history as you are going to read thanks to your optional paper. See the question. Visionary decision making happens at the intersection of intuition and logic. Now, again, the same great personalities like Buddha and Mahavira and Christ, and in India, Mahatma Gandhi to Vivekanand to Jawaharlal Nehru to many more, they had a great insight, they reflected a lot, and they were very logical people. That is why they were great, that is why they succeeded. And again, you can give a lot of examples from past and recent past, from different branches of life, from philosophy to literature to religion to politics to corporate to sports to science to technology. And you have plenty of experience people in India right from ancient time whose name you can mention here. Not all who wander are lost. Again, if you look at Mahatma Buddha wandered, all the Bhakti saints and Sufi saints wandered. Even Mahatma Gandhi wandered from Africa to India and traveled across the country. Huan Song to Fahian to Megasthenes to a lot of travelers wandered, but they discovered. But they found something very real, very substantial thing which is related to our life. They wrote, they spoke. So often what we jokingly say that you are a wanderer monk or you are a wanderer boy during our school and college days in a negative sense. But here it is a very positive sense that they actually, during their wandering period, they first discovered themselves, then they discovered about this world, and then they discovered about this universe reality. And that is how the philosophies, the ideas germinated in the writings from Aristotle to Socrates to Plato. There are two types of wandering that is also you have to keep in your mind. One is the physical wandering, that you walk by your foot and you travel and you meet and you experience and you write. And one is your mental journey, Now, that is very important, and all the greats which I mentioned, including Hafiz and Rumi of Iran, they were actually those people who could go inside their mind and what you can call heart and soul to discover their reality. That wandering is also a part of this topic. This, of course, you can learn only in history classes, no other classes. With all due respect to other subject, you would learn as much as detail. I just gave you tips of iceberg in this example. Inspiration for creativity springs from the effort to look for the magical in mundane. All the great people became again great not because they were looking great things. They saw great thing in what you call ordinary thing, and from that ordinary itself, they made a mass movement, a revolt, a revolution, a change, which is a public change, political change, social change. That, of course, you would get plenty of example when you read optional. Now, you would also get certain questions like a society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. Often you must have heard that this man is very good because he gives a lot of charity, this country is good because they give a lot of charity, but you perhaps never thought that actually it is not a good sign of a society and a progression of a society and a country where a lot of people had to depend on another human being. The best society is where every individual is self-reliant physically, mentally, and financially and emotionally. If they had to depend on some other human being, it is a failure of the system, failure of the community life and society life. Now, this type of information, you won't get it in other subject. Once again, if you read history, you would find why slavery emerged in ancient time, why the feudal lords actually kept the peasants at very much poor, and why the colonial economy completely exploited and gave what is called doles and donations, and some rich people in India even today giving some pennies and peanuts, and then they claim they are great. But actually, if you look at the justice, if not done in the society through opportunity, through end of inequality, through end of untouchability, through gender discrimination when you end. These are those things, if you give to your people, they don't need your charity. They would do, they have their own hand and feet and their mind. All you need is to provide a just system, give an opportunity. Now, it was this issue which became a big issue during freedom struggle, because during freedom struggle you would find that the struggle was not only between Indians and British. The struggle was between Indian and Indians. There were certain privileged Indians, obviously deprived Indian. And the size of deprived Indian was huge compared to the size of privileged Indian. It was based on caste, it was based on gender, it was based on region, it was based on class, it was based on multiple identities. So we had very long struggle to liberate human being from another set of human being, and this journey continues. It's not like that you got independence in 1947 and that it's the end. If you read the poetries of Faz, wo subha kabhi to aayegi, what he mentioned that the dawn would come for the poor, for the farmer, for the women, for the downtrodden, for the tribals, when they would be proud of their being, for their own identity. Now, if they're dependent on someone else's charity, their pride is gone. And that means there was injustice. So, this beautiful linkages between the justice and pride, injustice and charity, is very important point which generally IAS aspirants do not understand because they read the material which is of poor quality. Of course, we will train them how to read good books, good articles, listen good lectures. choose good optional like history, as I told, because history would tell you all these things. Whatever I learned and I told in the last 20 minutes, it was all from history. And any student, I have never seen a student who read history thoroughly and he cannot speak properly on any topic related to human being. They just need few information, some facts, some data, because it skills you in your writing. It skills you in your thinking. So one of the greatest advantage in a paper like history you would find, and that exactly what I wanted to tell, that it helps in your intellectual depth. Now, this intellectual depth would not come easily. UPSC is going to check the width and the depth of your knowledge. So during your main exam, when they ask, discuss, critically examine, do you agree? Actually, this is the test of your intellectual depth. The informations are available now through newspaper, magazines, media, social media, and even common people are now well informed about various events in the country and world. But they may not have in-depth knowledge about it. They may not have analytical ability. History would train you because you are going to learn various ideologies which confronted human beings, various isms. You heard about socialism, communism, Marxism, you heard about nationalism, of course, Gandhiism, and why people were fighting on all these is you would learn about revolutions, you would learn about movements of various kind, and you got the rights which you are writing civil service exam. It was also due to a struggle which we fought. Otherwise, this exam was only meant for white in the beginning, then for the Indian elite, male only, and for the female, for the other people, this came only after independence. So that's how the beauty of these rights which you would get in our history classes. Now, among intellectual depth, one point which you would learn through history is that you know how to compare, you know how to contrast, you know what is right, what is wrong, because the examples are plenty in history, and a student of history optional would certainly would have more depth than others. I'm not saying that others would not have depth. All I'm saying that the depth which is required in UPSC exam in different papers and interview, history would definitely enhance in developing a personality, and that in-depth knowledge would resonate in your personality. The way you would talk, the way you would write, right from the first sentence until the last, teacher would know that you have depth. And that is why it is not only going to impact your optional, but as I told, your GS papers, your essay, and when in interview also, what I have noticed and we have noticed is that before you go to interview hall, they would see your resume, what is called DAF, Detailed Application Form. And if they have seen that history you have taken as an optional, at least two members, maybe the chairman also, would start thinking what kind of question they would ask from history. Now imagine that your part is already done and you just have to be, normal, because they would not ask some factual questions. They would ask some interesting question which is related to history, because what I noticed that many gentlemen who conduct the interview, they all have interest in history. They may not have interest, all of them, in say economics, or maybe all of them are not very much interested in foreign policy, or maybe not interested in technology. But history is one subject which fascinates from every child to very senior people. Of course, they have their different areas of interest. But what my point is that at least 20% part of your interview is very safe when you have history in an optional paper. And during your talk also, you can give example of certain historical characters or events, whether from India and world. And once you give it, they would definitely ask counter question and you are ready. So this is how you can predict many parts of your interview during your conversation, and your talk itself would be very interesting, it would be healthy in terms of discussions, and it would be like two intellectuals are discussing, not like one very highly intellectual people and one ordinary. So that would not give you good marks in interview. I have never seen a student who had optional history and getting poor marks in interview. What I noticed, a correlation between two papers directly: history optional and essay, history optional and interview. Now these are some of my own findings through my own students who gave this exam, and I was very much curious to know, because that is my subject, that how much they perform in essay and in interview. And believe me that most of them would score over 170. And over 170 in interview means you are now sure to get your selection, because you just have to be average in your main exam. Even if somebody is very much rock bottom, he or she would get his place somewhere in the merit list. So that is why you must take history as an optional paper. Now, it helps in prelims exam, as we all know that out of 100 questions, 18 to 22 would be coming from history: ancient, medieval, modern. Art and culture is a part of history. Often in many universities, it is like history and culture, not separate department, same department. Now, what is the point? Again, from my own students' examples, and since I have a very large sample size, which is good enough for a research, that if a candidate who had some other subject, any subject other than history, out of 20, she or he can do maximum 7 questions correctly. Rest, he is not sure. Maybe by chance 8 or 9. But there is a high chance that he would mess up, because the options, as you know, are very close to each other. And many students, I noticed that they thought in exam hall that this is the right option. Outside, we told no, it was a wrong option. Now, a student who had taken history as an optional paper, he can score easily without any extra efforts 17 to 16 out of 20. I'm not guaranteeing 20 out of 20. That we know it's very asking like a moon. But imagine 16, 17 out of 20. And your another colleague sitting your right, left, and center and behind is doing just 7 and 8. You have 10 question advantage. That means 20 marks sure advantage. Even if you're not so good in other GS paper, with the help of history you can do much better, and you would clear your prelims. So your chances to clear the prelims is much higher than those who have taken any other optional paper. Of course, we know that there are certain optional papers which has no value in general studies MCQ. And one reason why many students fail again and again in prelims, because they do not choose history as an optional paper. So once you take history as an optional paper, you do not have to worry about prelims. All you need is to do 2-3 more area like geography, environment, like constitutions, like certain part of economy and current affairs. And the kind of question which they ask in history, since it is treated as a static, at least in prelims it is a static, so once you have done it through smart work, and you know, if you have already done in optional paper, you would definitely get more insight, more depth, facts, figure, data, date, person, and statements, etc., would be much easier for you than the candidate who has not taken history. So for you, it would be almost like a cakewalk after 6 months of classes of history optional. So why don't you think to take history as an optional paper? And as I told you that we have a very good team here. Myself would be taking part of modern history. My very good friends here like Mr. Rohan Srivastava would take medieval history, Mr. Praveen Dikshit would take of ancient history, and Mr. Chandraban Singh would take care of your world history. Each of them have worked in their areas. So we are working on that particular area as per UPSC syllabus and trend. So the beauty of these that a team is always better than an individual. this is a gospel truth. You can't beat a team if you are an individual. So one of the beauty of Vajiram is that here we have a team, whether it is general studies, whether it is optional paper, and we have our own segment. So we are working, we are forced to work, each one of us in their area, not only the traditional papers and books, but also what is coming up recent in our areas through our university teachers and magazines and the books, so that we update, because UPSC is always updating, UPSC is always connecting past and present. Even in the paper 4 which they ask about Vivekanand, Gandhi and Nehru, and they ask, in the light of current events, how would you explain? So in our classes, when we talk about Mahatma Gandhi, we also tell how Gandhi's thoughts are relevant today, how Vivekanand thoughts are relevant today, how Nehru's ideas is very important in modern India. Of course, some of their thoughts would be limited in its appeal with the passage of time, but some of the core values, some of the core thought of all these people would remain for very long time. That is because they understood human psychology, they understood human history, they understood human strength and weaknesses much better than many of us. And of course, an Indian who was a thinker, he would understand the psyche of Indian much better, like Mahatma Gandhi and Mahatma Buddha and Vivekananda and Jawaharlal Nehru. Why they were successful? Because they understood the psyche of Indians much better than, say, Karl Marx. He may be a great scholar, but many of his philosophy and many of his prophecy about India proved wrong. Like about after 1857, he thought there would be a great, revolution in India, which didn't happen. After introduction of railway, he wrote that there would be a big change in India. Socially he was talking, politically he was talking, but it didn't happen as it happened in other European countries. That was because not Karl Marx was wrong, but because Karl Marx didn't understand India the way Gandhi and other Indians thought. So our thinkers with our soil, with our psyche, with our abohava or our environment would understand better. And history optional would help you to understand India very well, Indians very well. And once you know both, then you are the right material for civil services examination. And that exactly what UPSC is looking in you. How much you understand India. Not only how much you know India, how much you understand India, how much you understand Indian people, because we are very diverse people from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and Arunachal to Gujarat. And history is one subject which is going to tell you through various routes, ancient, medieval, modern, art, culture, economy, polity, governance, regional kingdoms, regional art, all these are part of syllabus. It's enjoyable, it's very energetic, very enthusiastic, and the myth which many of you have, I will correct that myth also. Now, another very important advantage, I told you that it helps in interview, that the moment you enter and the questions related to history they would certainly ask, and you as a student of optional history would be much better than any other candidate. Now, this part I have already explained. Certain myths which I must clarify. A. It is lengthy. B. It is not scoring. All are created by ignorant people. Syllabus of UPSC other than literature like English, Hindi, Bangla, Marathi, Sanskrit, other than this, all the subjects are almost uniform. From outside it may look like that 7 chapter here and 10 chapter in another subject, but that 7 chapter may be equivalent to that 10 chapter and sometime more, because you don't know the depth of that chapter. For instance, in public administration, if you're talking about thinkers, so the moment you take one thinker, Karl Marx, now it looks like one topic, but how many topics within Karl Marx are hidden that you don't know when you enter into this exam preparation. So that is the myth created, as I told, by the ignorant people. UPSC tries its best to play what is called level playing game, and since last 75 years after independence now almost, they've succeeded that all subjects are represented in top 20 to top 50 to top 100 to top 200. That itself speaks that there is no advantage over one to another one. Now, since large number of students may appear from X subject, so large number of success would also come from X subject. But if you look at the failure would be also large from the same subject. So that means you have to look at beyond an absolute number. Certain absolute number is of course important because 10 cannot be a sample size, 5 cannot be a sample size. But the moment the subjects give more than 25 to 30 number in success, that means it should be counted, and of course history gives much more than that one. So what I am saying, that percentage of successful candidates who write from history optional and who succeed is consistently very good. That is the myth which I hope I have broken, and the reality is that it is not only helpful in that subject alone, it is also helpful in paper 1 of general studies, paper 2 of general studies, paper 4 of general studies, essay and interview. So imagine how much you are going to gain. Suppose hypothetically, student who got 280 in X optional, whichever subject you have in your mind, and a student who got 270 in history. So you may say he is 10 minus, sure. But because of history, even if I presume he got 260, for instance, so he is now 20 minus. Even if I presume this as a correct, then what this student is going to gain? Certainly he is going to gain 20 extra in essay. Certainly he is going to get 20 extra in your paper 4, because paper 4 would be about some great personalities. Like I told you, direct 40 marks came from this year from history alone. Then he would get certainly 10 to 15 marks extra in essay. And I told you, if you look at carefully, it is already 50 plus. So net would be she or he is still getting 30 plus thanks to history. And don't forget the first important principle, that you have to clear prelims. And I have already told you the advantage a student would have thanks to history, that 20 marks at least you would be having edge over others. If become very conservative, then I would go for 12 to 15 marks edge. Of course, I believe that you would be equally good in other subjects. Now, the same argument can be given for the student who have taken political science or who have taken geography. These are the only two competitors as prelims is concerned, because anthropology to sociology to any paper of technology or maths would have no direct, or literature, direct connection with general studies paper of prelims. So three papers which are called contenders fight is between history, geography, political science and international relations. But among all the three, history would have edge, because the questions of history is most predictable. The questions of geography and PSIR is very current. The current means that it is like open to all. Any student can do that through newspapers, through magazines, through our study material, through our classroom. So that means your optional may not be of great advantage in PSIR and geography as far as the prelims GS part is concerned, whereas history is going to definitely help, because there are certain areas which is not touched even in general studies. Because of the very nature of this exam, it's not possible that they would go into Stone Ages and different sites of Harappa, as well as Gandhi's entire journey in South Africa. They won't read it. The GS candidate won't read. They can't afford to read it. You have already read it. That means that advantage only history would have, history candidate would have, not other subject. This you don't forget. So with all these information, I'm sure your doubts must have been clear that why you should take history as an optional paper. We are going to start our next batch from next month, October itself, at Vajiram, and all our successful batch students are example. You can talk to them and about our experiences. I'm sure you would enjoy. All our 4 faculty members who are working extremely well and very much enthusiastic about the subject, you would also enjoy. So join us from October 2023 for history optional. Thank you very much. May God bless you.